Hello and welcome to a new YouMotion tutorial series. This series is called YouMotion in Practice and it's all about using YouMotion in real-world scenarios. The previous tutorial series have been explaining step by step all features of YouMotion. In this series we are going to use these features to create some cool animations. All video tutorials can be found in the YouMotion manual in the video tutorials chapter. For this first episode, we will start with something simple. We will combine first-person hands with a gun and create a shooting animation. Please note that I will teach the basics of animating, so even if you are not making a first-person shooter game, I would still recommend watching this tutorial as the basics are the same no matter what type of animation you are creating. You can download this whole project including the final animations from the link provided in the video description. Once you imported the project, download and import YouMotion Community from the Asset Store. I'm not going to import the YouMotion examples folder, as we are not going to need it in this project. I already prepared a test scene that uses the first-person example scene of the standard assets together with the standard first-person controller. Next, navigate to the Scenes folder in the project window and open the character first-person scene by double-clicking on it. I'm using first-person hands that I found on this homepage. They are made out of Unity's Hero model and are free to use. I also downloaded the free PM40 gun from the Asset Store. Both products are amazing and I want to thank the creators for giving them away for free. Alright, we will start by attaching the first-person hands to the main camera. The hands are located in the first-person gun folder. There is a high and a low polygon version. I'm dragging the high polygon version into the hierarchy window to make it a child of the main camera. Next, we need to put the gun model into the scene. We will attach it as a child of the right hand, thus we need to expand all transforms until we get to the right hand. I will reduce the scaling of the gun to better fit to the first-person hands. Then I'm going to reset the local position to 0 in order to move the gun to the center of the hand. By holding Ctrl while using the rotation tool, you can snap the rotation. I will use this to do a few 90-degree rotations to align the gun with the current orientation of the hand. Now it's easier to fine-tune the scaling and move the gun to a good position. Maybe we should make the gun a little bit bigger. And correct the position a little bit. Okay, so we will fine-tune the placement in YouMotion once we do the first pose of our animation. I'm going to rename the arms to indicate that they are combined with the gun model. Now I can drag and drop it to the prefabs folder to create a prefab, which makes it easier for later usage. I would suggest to place the game view window next to the scene view window. This is one of the huge benefits of an animation editor that is directly integrated in the game engine, as we now can use the game view to preview the animation from the same perspective as it will be used in-game. We can then open YouMotion by clicking on Window, YouMotion Editor, Clip Editor and drag it next to the animation window. Then Open the pose editor and place it next to the inspector window. Let's create a new project of type generic and store it under the uMotion projects folder that I have already prepared. Please remember to always give your project a speaking name. We can now drag and drop our first-person hands to the pose editor. uMotion will automatically configure the project so that we are now ready to start animating. The camera icon is a little bit annoying, so we will disable it by clicking on Gizmos and reduce the size all the way down to 0. We are now going to create the initial pose of our animation and place the gun in the lower right corner of the game camera. Therefore, we will rotate the upper arm until it is in a vertical orientation. Then, we can rotate the forearm up until the gun appears in the game view. We need to apply some twist to the hand. Please note that I am doing half of the rotation at the bone of the forearm and the other half of the rotation on the wrist. This simulates how the L and spoke would rotate a human forearm. Never use the elbow joint to rotate around its own axis. I will disable the bone rendering by pressing the shortcut. Please note that when I press a shortcut, it is visualized on the bottom center of the video. I might also increase the size of the transforms in order to make it easier to select them. Now I'm hiding the transforms and I'm showing the bones again so that I can correctly place the thumb. I'm always enabling and disabling the rendering of the bones to get an idea how the final pose is going to look like. Okay, that looks already pretty good. I'm going to use stick rendering to have a better sight on the mesh of the fingers. I can now place the rest of the thumb around the gun. Oh, I did some unnatural rotation on the first phalanx of the thumb. Let's correct this. Notice how the position of the gun is changing depending on the current game view window size. This is due to the changing aspect ratio of the window. So we might fix this by using a fixed aspect ratio of 16:9, which is quite common. The gun is now keeping its position relative to the camera. We can now fine-tune the placement of the gun. Please notice how the camera is clipping parts of the gun. This is due to the camera's clip near value. We will adjust that in a second. It is not allowed to select the camera while we are still in pose mode, so for correcting the clipping issue, we need to leave the pose mode for a second. Therefore, I'm going to store the modifications as keys so that they are not lost. I do that by selecting all bones by pressing Ctrl A. Then I click on Key Selected, Key All to create keys for every property, even if it wasn't modified. By clicking on Clear, I can leave the pose mode. Let's bring the inspector window to the front and select the main camera. In the inspector, we can now adjust the clip near value to something smaller. I think 0.1 should work just fine. Let's return to YouMotion. Now you can see that the clipping problem is gone. I will now start to adjust the rotation of the other fingers. In order to keep this video at a reasonable length, I will increase the video speed, as this works similar to how we adjusted the thumb. I'm also moving the pistol a little bit to make it fit better into the hand. Okay, I think this looks pretty good. Let's create keys for all the modifications by selecting everything and clicking on Key Selected, Key All. Next, we are going to pose the left hand so that the gun is held with two hands. If you own a copy of YouMotion Professional, this would be a situation where inverse kinematics comes in handy, as you could directly drag the hand to the desired position. For this tutorial, I will keep using forward kinematics. We need to play with the rotation of the upper arm and the forearm to get the hand in a good position where it is able to grab the pistol. This is a little bit of a time-consuming process, thus I will speed up the video slightly to reduce the length of this tutorial. Okay, now that we have the hand already in a good position, we can start adjusting the fingers. The most important aspect is that the pose looks good from the game view perspective. So always invest more time in parts of the pose that are visible from this perspective and don't spend too much time on things that can't be seen by the player. Please note that for the purpose of this video, I won't invest too much time into making this pose perfectly. Let's apply all changes again. Please note that Key All has the S key mapped as shortcut. Try to use the shortcuts as much as possible, as they will make you really fast. Alright, so now that we have our initial pose, we can start creating the fire animation. What usually happens when you are firing a pistol is that the slide is moving backwards. Additionally, the recoil will move the pistol backwards and the pistol will slightly rotate upwards. With the clip editor, you can define which pose the animated object has at which time of the animation. So as you can see, we only have one frame with keys at the moment, which is this pose that we've just created. For our animation, we will need two more poses. One after the gun was fired and pushed back by the recoil, and the last pose will be the same as the original pose, where the gun is moved back to its original position, ready to be fired again. Let's move the slide back. We need to select the correct transform. I think it's that one. With the Move tool, we can then move it backwards. Make sure that the pivot mode is set to local so that the handle of the move tool is perfectly aligned with the pistol. Then press the S key to key the slide's new pose. Next, we will add some recoil to the animation. The easiest way is to do this through the topmost bone, as it will affect the arms and the pistol at the same time. Slightly rotate everything upwards. Use the Move tool and set Pivot Mode to Global. Then move the whole rig a little bit backwards. Use the Game View to check if this will look good in-game. Click on Key Selected Key All to add our changes to the current pose. Our last pose will be the same as the original pose. Let's select all keys by clicking on the Master key at the top. By pressing Ctrl C, we can copy all selected keys. Move the frame cursor by clicking somewhere on the time ruler and paste the keys by pressing Ctrl V. Click into the time ruler and drag the frame cursor to preview the animation. As you can see, I think it already looks pretty good. What's really important to make the animation look realistic is that the duration between two poses is correct. The more frames that are between two poses, the slower the movement will be. Let's play the animation in real time to check the current timing. There are two things that are currently not correct. The overall animation is too slow, and I think the duration of the first part of the animation should be faster than the second part, as the recoil would push the gun faster backwards, as the human will be able to bring it back into the original position. It's easy to correct the timing by moving the keys along the time axis. Let's play the animation again. I think this looks much better now. Okay, now we have the overall animation timing defined, but there is still one important thing missing to make the animation look realistic. No matter if it is our shooting animation or a walk cycle that we create, the movement speed is never linear across the whole animation. So in order to make the animation look natural and realistic, we need to use the animation curves to define where a movement should accelerate, decelerate, or keeping constant speed. If you created some animations in the past and you weren't happy with the results, chances are high that you missed fine-tuning the animation curves. In our shooting animation, there are only two kinds of movements happening: the slide movement and the recoil. Let's select the bone we modified for the recoil movement, and then in the channels section, we will right-click on a rotation channel and click on Select in Clip Editor. That's easier than searching the bone's property in the Animated Properties list. In the Curve Editor, we can now see the animation curve. If you are completely new to animation curves, I would recommend watching the appropriate tutorial linked in the video description. As you can see at the beginning of the animation, the speed is slowly increasing and stays constant till the last pose where speed decreases slowly. This is okay, but in the middle, where we start to rotate the hands into the opposite direction, it will keep the speed constant. This is very unrealistic, as in the real world you would first decelerate and then accelerate again to move into the opposite direction. Setting the key tangents to free flat mode will produce the desired result. Let's check the position property of the same bone. It accelerates at the beginning, decelerates and accelerates when changing the movement direction, and when it reaches the original pose, it again decelerates smoothly. That's okay. In the last step, we will check the movement of the slide. It looks the same as the other position curve, so this should work just fine. Now that our animation is finished, Let's rename it to Fire. Next, we will have to define a directory where our animations should be exported to. I already prepared a folder for that purpose. As we want to play the fire animation only when the left mouse button is pressed, we will also need an idle animation. I will just copy all keys of our initial pose and create a new clip that I call idle. Now I will paste the keys at the first frame and again a few frames afterwards. As you can see, this animation is just doing nothing. You can create a more compelling idle animation if you want. In the clip settings, we should set the loop flag so that the exported animation is played in a loop. Okay, time to export our clips. I have already prepared a short script. What it does is it gets a reference to the animator component at the beginning, and in the update method it checks every frame if the user pressed the left mouse button. If so, it will set an animation trigger that I called Fire. The only thing missing is an animator controller. I've put a link to Unity's video tutorials about the animator in the video description. Let's open the animator window and drag the idle animation and the fire animation into the controller. Next, I will add the fire trigger that is called by the script. We can now create a transition from the idle to the fire animation and back. Okay, this transition should happen immediately, not at the exit of the previous state, and it should only happen when the fire trigger was set by the script. It's important that we reduce the transition time so that it immediately blends to our animation. In the exit transition, we need to make sure that the transition starts at the end of our animation. I will also minimize the transition duration. Let's assign our controller to the animator of our prefab, and we also need to assign the script. As you can see, the hands are casting a shadow, and that will look strange in-game. So let's turn off the shadow casting. We also need to turn it off for all parts of the pistol. And that's it. Let's test our animation in-game. Okay, so the animation is playing when I press the left mouse button, and I think it looks pretty cool. You may notice that the pistol is passing through walls. This can be fixed by using a second camera. I have added a link to how this can be done into the video description. If you have any questions, feel free to visit the YouMotion support page and ask your questions. There is no need to create an account. Thanks for watching, and please visit the YouMotion forum thread in the Unity forum to let me know if you found this tutorial helpful and what tutorials I should record in the future.